Once upon a time, in a small dusty village nestled by a winding river, lived a humble potter named Khalid. Khalid's life was a testament to hardship and relentless toil. His small mud brick hut, perched near the riverbank, stood out among the other simple homes, a symbol of his modest existence. Khalid had lost his father in childhood, and the early cloak of orphanhood had introduced him to life's harsh realities far too soon. He remembered, as a boy, watching his mother bent over the spinning wheel late into the night, shaping clay into pots. A deep, unnamed ache would stir in his heart. His innocent eyes often held the question, why didn't he have a father like the other children? His mother, a potter herself, would always smile, pat his head, and say, "My son, God tests those he loves, and their destiny holds something special. You must work hard, and God will bless your efforts." It was her tireless effort, kneading the clay, throwing pots on the wheel, baking them in the sun, and selling them in the market, that had raised Khalid. He grew up on the difficult path of poverty. Time passed. Khalid grew into a young man, married, and soon, a small son was born into their humble home. Despite the poverty, the lamp of joy and love burned brightly in their little hut. Every day, Khalid would rise before dawn. He'd dig the raw earth, soften it, mix it with water, and then with practiced hands, set the clay on the wheel. He'd spin and shape bowls, pitchers, water jugs, and cooking pots. When the sun grew fierce, he'd lay them out to bake, and later, he'd take them to the market. Khalid was content with his labor, holding a firm belief that true peace lay in honest work. However, a corner of his heart always felt the void of his father. And now, a new sorrow settled upon him, his mother's failing health. One evening, as Khalid was cleaning his wheel, his wife Aisha rushed in. "Khalid, your mother is very ill. She keeps calling for you." Khalid instantly washed his hands and hurried to his mother. She lay on the old cot, her face worn by weakness, but her eyes shone with a special light. "My son Khalid," she whispered with deep affection. "My time is near. I raised you as an orphan, selling clay pots to see you grown. But I fear I cannot stay much longer." Tears streamed down Khalid's face. "Mother, please don't speak like this. God will grant you health. You will stay with me." His mother sighed. "Life and death are in God's hands, my son. Remember this one piece of advice: no matter how difficult your circumstances, keep giving in the way of God. Charity, Sadaqah, never reduces wealth. It increases it. It has the power to ward off calamities and change your destiny." Khalid wept harder, clutching her hand. "Mother, don't worry. I promise I will always spend in the way of God." She smiled, offered a final prayer for him, and moments later, the eyes that had watched over him for so many years closed forever. A pall of grief descended upon the hut. Khalid was devastated, but in the deepest part of his heart, his mother's advice echoed, "Give Sadaqah. Keep spending in the way of God." This counsel was now to be his life's guiding star. Khalid returned from his mother's graveside, his face wet with tears but his spirit armed with a new resolve. He knew his mother's last words were his true inheritance. He made a solemn vow, "No matter what, I will give Sadaqah. Blessings will only come through spending in the way of God, even in poverty." Khalid intensified his work. Early each morning, he'd load his small sturdy donkey with old, strong baskets and head toward the fertile clay deposits. He'd dig the soft, rich soil with his pickaxe, fill the baskets, and load the donkey. Despite the blazing sun, the sweat stinging his eyes, and the blisters on his hands, he never complained. He'd constantly remind himself, "This toil is my test." And God never lets his servant's hard work go to waste. Back home, he'd process the clay, kneading it until it was supple and ready for the wheel. It was a skill he'd mastered watching his mother. Once ready, he'd set it on the wheel, turning the clay into the beautiful functional shapes his village needed. When the pots were baked and ready, Khalid would carefully load them onto his donkey, using straw and old sacks to protect the brittle cargo, and head to the marketplace. His pots were simple but renowned for their durability. "Khalid's pots last longer," the village women would often say. By day's end, Khalid would return with a handful of coins. His first priority was always to buy food for his wife and son. But whatever coins remained, he faithfully set aside a portion for Sadaqah. Often, on his way home, he'd meet an orphan child in rags. Seeing the pleading look in the child's eyes, Khalid would pull out some coins and press them into the small waiting hand. Other times, he'd see an elderly beggar woman. He never hesitated. One day, he met a widow with a small starving child. Khalid had only one pot left, a cooking pot, handy, which he hadn't sold. He took it off the donkey and gave it to her. "Sister," he said gently, placing the pot in her hands, "please take this. You can cook a meal in it for your son." Tears welled in the woman's eyes. "May God bless your sustenance abundantly, brother," she prayed. A deep sense of peace flooded Khalid. He knew his mother's advice was true. Giving away wealth wouldn't make him poorer, it would increase his blessings. He would return home, eat a humble meal with his family, and afterward, teach his son the Quran. At night he would prostrate himself in prayer, often supplicating, "O God, make me a servant who spends freely in your way. Grant me patience in trials, and make my son righteous." In this manner, days turned into months. Khalid's hard work and commitment to Sadaqah created an atmosphere of peace in his home. Poverty was still their companion, but the wealth of their hearts made their lives invaluable. Life continued its steady humble course until one day, the skies seemed to turn against Khalid. A full week passed under a continuous blanket of black, heavy clouds. The sun vanished, and without it, the clay pots could not dry. All the pots Khalid made that week remained soft and fragile. He knew that if the sun didn't return, all his labor would be wasted. He tried to salvage his work. He dragged firewood from the forest, built a small fire outside his hut, and tried to dry the pots with its heat. Sweat poured down his face as he rotated the vessels near the flames. He kept praying, "O God, help me. I must uphold my mother's advice. Give me strength." But fire could not replace the sun. Many pots cracked or remained too brittle to sell. A whole week's worth of effort yielded only a handful of usable pots. When he went to the market, he had few items, and fewer customers, as people avoided the rain-slicked bazaar. Khalid's income dropped drastically. Yet, he held firm to his habit. He bought food for his family, and from the meager coins remaining, he gave Sadaqah. This time, he had no pot to give, so he gave coins. Charity isn't just about giving objects, it's about the intention. God sees the heart, not the thing, he reasoned. On his way home, a fellow villager stopped him. "Khalid, I admire your perseverance, but I see you still give away a portion of your small earnings. Why don't you save more for your family? After all, you are struggling." Khalid smiled. "Brother, the provision written for me will surely reach me. Giving Sadaqah doesn't cause loss, it increases blessings. It was my mother's final advice. How could I abandon it?" The man looked at him in silent wonder and walked away. When Khalid reached home, Aisha placed a small, simple meal before him. "Khalid," she said, her voice heavy with worry, "our situation is changing. Our income is so low now, yet you still give away so much. We must save for ourselves. What if bad times get worse?" Khalid looked at his wife. Her words made sense, yet his mother's powerful counsel resonated deeper in his soul. He spoke softly, "I cannot stop giving Sadaqah. If we spend in the way of God, He will never abandon us. My mother said that Sadaqah wards off calamities and increases provision. We must trust God." Aisha fell silent, but the worry lingered in her eyes. That night, Khalid stayed up long after his family slept. He knelt on his prayer mat on the mud floor, his forehead touching the ground. Tears flowed as he poured out his heart.
"My Lord, you know you have never forgotten my mother's advice.
I spend in your way, even when I have little for myself.
Accept my Sadaqah. Bless my labor.
Shower your mercy on my family, and lift us from these trials." The gentle sound of rain outside mirrored the quiet storm in his heart. But as his tears met the earth in submission, a strange peace settled over him. He realized that God sends trials, but also provides ease for those who remain patient and faithful. When Khalid awoke the next morning, he felt a profound sense of calm. For days, the sight of the dark, gloomy sky had filled him with despair. But as he opened the window, bright rays of sunshine poured onto his face. "Praise be to God," he exclaimed. "Thank you, God, for opening the door of your mercy again." He performed his ablutions and offered 2 units of voluntary prayer. His heart was full of conviction. He prayed, "O God, accept my work. Never let me be deprived of the path of Sadaqah, and bless my children with goodness." Joyfully, he told Aisha and his son that the sun was out, and he was heading to the forest for clay. A smile returned to his wife's face. Khalid prepared his donkey, took his pickaxe and basket, and set off. Entering the forest, he noticed how clean and refreshed everything looked after the rain. He began to search for the right kind of clay. He struck his pickaxe in several spots, but the earth was too hard or coarse. Suddenly, his eyes fell upon a small mound of earth. It looked different. The clay was softer, smoother, and had a richer, more unique color. Curiosity sparked in him. Why is this spot different? Maybe the clay is better here, he thought. He struck his pickaxe into the mound. The first blow scattered the earth easily. Encouraged, he dug deeper. A few moments later, his pickaxe struck something solid. The sound was a dull thunk, like metal hitting wood. Khalid's heart pounded.
What is this?
Did someone bury something, or is it an ancient secret? Frantically, he cleared the surrounding earth. Soon, an old iron chest was revealed beneath the soil. His hands trembled.
Bismillah.
May God grant goodness, he muttered. With great effort, he pulled the heavy chest out of the ground and set it near his donkey. When he finally forced the rusted lock open, his eyes went wide with disbelief. Inside were gold coins, silver bars, precious jewelry, and priceless gems. It was a scene more beautiful than any dream. Khalid's knees buckled. Tears streamed down his face, and he collapsed into prostration right there. Oh God, this is your immense favor. I was nothing. My labor was simple. But you have rewarded me with this treasure through the blessing of Sadaqah, he sobbed. He loaded the chest onto the donkey and rushed home. Aisha and their son were stunned. This is not due to my effort or yours, Khalid told his wife, his voice filled with emotion. This is all the blessing of Sadaqah and the grace of God. From that day forward, Khalid's life changed. Poverty and hardship were replaced by comfort and peace. Yet one thing remained constant: Khalid's Sadaqah, charity. Now, he gave with a far more open and generous hand. He provided clothing and food to orphans, supported widows, fed travelers, and built facilities for the destitute. People would often ask him, Khalid, God has given you so much now. Surely you can reduce your charity. He would simply smile and reply, No, my friends. I remember my mother's advice. Sadaqah never diminishes wealth, it increases the blessing. If I received this treasure, it was only through the blessing of Sadaqah. And so, Khalid's destiny was transformed. He became wealthy, but he never lost his humility or gratitude. His home was filled with peace, his heart with love, and his tongue was never without praise for God. Give, even when you have little. God's blessings will return to you in ways you cannot imagine.